Welcome to WEHM All Access, the podcast where we bring you in-depth conversations with the people shaping life right here on Eastern Long Island. Now, every episode, we're going to dive into the stories, the music, and the voices that define our community, from local leaders to the musicians you know and love. And throughout the summer, we're catching up with many of the performers taking the stage at the Great South Bay Music Festival, getting the inside scoop on their music, their journey, and what they're bringing to Patchogue this year. On this episode of WEHM All Access, we speak with Mark Rechler from Circus Mind. It's a band that blends New Orleans funk, rock, and soul into something kind of completely their own. We get into how their group started, how Mark's time in New Orleans shaped their sound, and what they're bringing to the Jambalaya Stage at this year's Great South Bay Music Festival. Here's our conversation with Mark Rechler from Circus Mind on WEHM All Access. It's the EHM Breakfast Show with Harry. EHM All Access for the Great South Bay Music Festival. We're chatting with a whole bunch of different bands that are performing this year. It's kind of exciting to get to know the performers. I'm looking forward to seeing them all on the stages at the Great South Bay Music Festival. And one of the bands that's very cool, kind of bringing the sound of New Orleans a little bit to the Great South Bay Music Festival, is Circus Mind. And we want to start by welcoming Mark Rechler to the virtual studio. Mark, how are you?
I'm doing great. How's it going?
Very good. Thanks for doing this. I appreciate it. And I guess the goal of these interviews is to kind of learn about these bands, and I think it makes it more fun, too, when you see them perform and you know a little more about them and kind of where they're from. And I guess let's start at the very beginning. Where did you grow up, and how did you find your way to music, so to speak?
I'm a Long Islander. I grew up in Dix Hills, played in a couple bands, went to school in New Orleans at Tulane University, where I studied architecture and played in a band. And so that's where the New Orleans influence comes too. I sort of hung around with bands down there that I was really loved, and then eventually began playing with them or for them, and then they recorded on some of my stuff. So we loved like the Neville Brothers and the Meters and the Radiators, and I ended up playing with a bunch of those people. Leo Nocentelli, the Meters, the guitar player, and did a bunch of stints and tours with Fishhead Stew, which is an offshoot of the Radiators. So that's why you definitely hear the New Orleans sound in Circus Mind.
Well, we can't wait to see you perform on that Saturday. What day are you performing at the festival this year?
Saturday, 4/20.
That's
fair.
fair.
That's
Perfect. And you'll see Circus Mind there. They're a lot of fun on the Jambalaya Stage. As we get ready for the festival, I guess first, what's your history with the Great South Bay Music Festival?
Let's see. I think this might be my fifth time playing the festival, possibly. And it's been great. We've been on that five-town stage, the clamshell, a couple of times. Last year we were on the other stage. What's the other stage called? Do you recall?
There's clamshell. There's the Jambalaya Stage.
Oh, last year we were the Jambalaya, so I guess we're back on Jambalaya this time as well. And it's been great. We've made new friends and fans out there, and it's definitely good, to spread the word for Circus Mind. We also have a new album out, so we're sort of promoting that as well, which just came out last weekend.
Well, congratulations. Very, very cool. When did this band start? I know you have a lot of different projects. When did
kind of started around 1998, but we had a different name back then. And I'd say somewhere a year later, it probably was Circus Mind. And I think our first gig we played at was probably 2001, and we recorded our first album in 2003. I think that came out.
You've always blended different types of music: rock, funk, jazz, reggae. We talked about New Orleans soul.
Yes, all of that, all of the above. I'm definitely, influenced by everything I've, listened to growing up. A lot of, FM radio, 70s. We mix world beat, reggae, and things, and of course New Orleans music, like we spoke of, Dr. John, things like that. So yeah, you hear a lot of classic rock and funk. Definitely like Steely Dan and Little Feat would be like probably two of our biggest influences. But I mean, but the list is so long.
When you're writing music, how do you decide kind of which lane each song lives in, so to speak?
That's a great question. I usually try not to judge songs. I write a lot. I wrote 3 songs this week. I kind of just let it happen. And then sometimes I'm like, yeah, that's definitely, not a Circus Mind song. Sometimes I'll kind of just introduce it to the band, and somehow it just becomes one because of the guys, and what they bring to it. So you never really know. I try not, I might write if I wrote like 5 sad songs in a row. I mean, I gotta, we're a funk band. We play bars and live, so I gotta really amp it up on my my funky tunes. So that happens too, maybe I'm like, I got to lean a little heavier on the party vibe for the next one. But I try just to, be creative and let it come out.
You've performed at a lot of different places. I read you New Orleans Jazz Fest, the Fat Friday annual Mardi Gras Ball, I believe you
That's
guys have
right. We just
done.
did Brooklyn Bowl. That was last weekend.
What's it like to kind of, because obviously there's studio versions and then there's the live performances for the bands. How do they differ, or do they?
Yeah, it definitely does. We could, a bit of a jam band when we play live. We like to stretch stuff out. But of course, it depends on the venue and how long the set is. The Brooklyn Bowl was an opening set for Galactic. So, we kept that, of course, a little tighter and cleaner and showed off our songwriting and playing abilities in a much tighter way. But, if you come see us out, at, I don't know, Bo's Bar, or Still Partners, some local watering hole, we're going to stretch it out and really, have a great time.
Well, and take me back to the writing process a little bit. Obviously, you don't necessarily genre jump for its own sake for it, but how do you, where does it come from? Does the music start first, the lyrics? How does that evolve with the group as a collaborative
Lyrics
effort?
probably last for me, but it depends, If I sit at a piano, I play some chords, I'm like, I hit something, and then I'm off to the races. Sometimes I'm just walking down the street and I'm singing something and I'm like, what is that song I'm singing? Is that a song I know? And then I just thank God for our iPhones, vocal. I record a little ditty in there. I have, 4,000 little ditties in my phone, and I try to name them and go back to them. And that's usually the germination, the seed. Sometimes, like I told you, if I'm looking to like write some more funky songs, I have a nice trick for that, which is I'll just put on a real funky beat,
Yeah.
some break beat or something, and I'll write to that, and boom, I'm already in the mode of a beat tune. So it kind of depends, and most of the time I am just like sort of sitting around at a piano and hit some cool chords, and I'm like, ooh, what's that? And it just kind of goes from there. I once saw a keynote speaker, Neil Young, was speaking at South by Southwest, and he taught me a great lesson, which is if you start writing something and the muses come, you have to finish it. All else must stop. Cancel your dinner, your plans, your meeting your friends. He's like, you have to. And I've really stuck with that, and it's really helped me. So once I get on a roll and I'm, riding the horse, you don't get off until you get to your destination.
It's great advice. You've got a lot of different instruments in the band. How do you work them in? How early in the conversation do you start kind of placing horns and different things? Do you know that right away, or how
No,
long?
I don't. So like once I have a song that I'm like, oh, this is definitely a Circus Mind song. I can't wait to show the band. We'll do a special session of focusing on new material, which, happens, every 3 or 4 months because I'm writing a lot. And they kind sometimes I show them something with something in my head, and Dan, the drummer, will like throw a completely different beat on it, and I'm like, oh, I wasn't even thinking about that. And of course, I get veto power, which is nice. But the whole thing about a band is you want them to bring their skills and thoughts and concepts, and that's what makes a band a band. And so they're really good, and that's why I like to surround myself with talent because it adds to the thing. So once we're in the room, they might surprise me with some stuff, and it's really more like when we get to the recording studio and with my producer Chris Fasulo, also a Long Island guy out of Oyster Bay. He's amazing. He's done my last 3 records. That's kind of when we might talk about horns. You're like, it would sound good, let's bring in some girls for backing vocals or whatever. So that kind of is more of a studio thing.
You mentioned you wrote like 3 songs this week. Are you constantly writing things and kind of plotting out
It
different
comes
records?
in waves, but I'm riding the wave right now. And so sometimes I have this weird thing where I don't want to write songs because I feel like, it's like having a child. And once, you have the child, you got to feed it and get it clothes and send it to school and ultimately, make sure it graduates so it can go live on its own. I feel indebted to these little things that come out. But at the same time, I don't want to stop it, and so it's a little give and take because it could get overwhelming, and it's expensive to record
Yeah.
music. It's not cheap. So if you make something that you're like, oh, that needs to get recorded, and then like you're off on a journey. So that's why sometimes I have reservations. But I'm on a roll right now, and they're coming out, so I'm just letting it happen.
The last record is Road Less Traveled, which came out back in June.
Yes.
How long does the average record take to put together? And
Yeah, that's a good question. I'd say it's kind of probably a 2 year process from when I write a song until it comes out on the album, because we have a lot of backlog. Like right now, we have some tracks that are just drum and bass tracks, and we're gonna get in the studio and finish a bulk of that this summer. We have stuff in different variations, which is why we started to release a song like every 5, 6 weeks, and we're kind of been in that mode, which is a nice way to keep feeding the fans and giving them something. And then we just, when we got to the end of 10 songs, or actually 12 songs, we picked the 10 that went together best on a record and, packaged it up nice with the last drop. So that's kind of how we've been doing it. We'll probably drop a single again in the next, I don't know, August, probably September. I'll drop another single of the next record.
You're performing this, of course, at this year's Great South Bay Music Festival. How do you design that set? Is it different than other live performances you're doing, or how do you kind of using the experience of the past
I think
too?
that's a 40-minute set.
Yeah.
It's really short for us. We come in like on fire. We want to like be just kind of wild out of the gates and suck them in and be extra funky. Just kind of bang, 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 bang. I think it's maybe 6 tunes in 40 minutes, maybe 7, possibly. And you just kind of do structure that a little different than if I was, playing a too long set somewhere.
Is it hard to kind of, because you have a pretty big catalog of songs to choose from. How do you balance the new stuff with stuff you've had for a while?
Yeah, that's a great question too. I don't know. You pick a bunch of the singles that are working with the band. Also depends how often you could get together with the band, and like everyone plays in other bands and has jobs, so that's a little bit of the challenge of being, running a band as well. So I guess the songs we've been playing often and that have a flow. But I'm always trying to introduce those new songs. Then you don't want to forget the old ones, and it's tricky. And we like to throw in covers for people. We probably won't do that in a set like Great South Bay. It's too short. But if you saw 2 sets of Circus Mind somewhere else, we'd mix it up really good with some great covers and stuff.
Well, you bring up an interesting point. You mentioned day jobs, and everyone's got different things they're working on. How do you balance it all? Because it's more than a hobby. It takes hard work to be a good band, and especially when you're writing a lot. How do you balance this with your other projects and other jobs you have?
Yeah, it's definitely more than a hobby. It's like a bad habit. It's tricky to balance. I sometimes I schedule it, I have to schedule like, all right, Fridays, I'm focused on music. I'm not going to my office for work today. I'm going to get into my studio and I'm going to finish the song and I'm going to, start recording and mapping it out. And so I like to have a flow like that. And, a couple of nights a week, of course, I'll be sitting at the piano. I might be practicing or just reviewing stuff, and it could happen then. So that's how I keep a flow. And then we usually try to get in a room as a band together, like twice a month. Again, we've been playing together so long that we're pretty good on a lot of stuff. It's really like, new material or new cover that we need to get together for.
Well, that makes a lot of sense. You've said it a whole bunch of different artists as, I guess, an influence on you, including Little Feat. And I was curious, what's the kind of one element of their band that you've really taken and run with and incorporated into Circus Mind?
There's so many things I take from Little Feat. First of all, they're playing Sunday at the festival, so I'm very excited about that. They have a cool new lineup. I saw them down at Jazz Fest, and they sounded great. Scott Sherrard, I don't know if you know him. He used to play with Greg Allman. He's fronting the band, sort of doing the Lil George thing right now, and he's doing it so well. Lil George, is a huge influence. His songwriting, his sense of humor, his wit. This sort of even like Little Feat, had a spread of sound from New Orleans sound to that sort of, Steely Dan polished vibe. Could even get a little prog sounding on some cool tracks and synth with Billy Payne on keyboards. So we take a lot from those bands for sure, and that kind of, technical playing.
That's interesting. Circus Mind's music has a lot of ties to different places like New Orleans, but also New York. How do you kind of balance the two cities in the songwriting? is that considered? And if you listen to it back, think, oh, that sounds more like this, a New York song or a sound?
It's not thought about too much. I mean, uh, sometimes I just write a song that's got like a New Orleans vibe to it.
Yeah.
I try not to do too many of those on like a record. I like to have like a varied group of sounds. There's usually like one or two, and I've been lucky enough that they've gotten some good radio play at WWOZ, my favorite radio station in the world. Down in New Orleans, we have a song called Jazz Fest Time that gets played, all Jazz Fest. And I wrote a song called the NOLA Song. We'll probably play both of those at Great South Bay. But it is. I don't really think about it, I guess, is the answer to that. It's just kind of like what comes out, and that's what it is. It's like I said, we did kind of a reggae alternative song on the last record. Sometimes we get like Caribbean vibe. So it's just, we like to have fun, really. We're doing it for ourselves, obviously, because we love to do it, and so we're playing what makes us feel good.
Is it hard to stand? There's a lot of bands out there, and they're the kind of the current jam leaning landscape. Where do you feel that Circus Mind kind of fits in, and where do you want them to kind of stand apart from them and be different?
Yeah, that's a good question. Well, I guess, somewhere in between the Grateful Dead and Steely Dan. I do like a lot of jam bands. And but at the same time, we don't just want to be considered that. I feel like on a songwriting level, we do a little better than most of those guys. We have a little bit of poppier flair in there. But I'm not uncomfortable with it either. At the same time, there's so many bands that I like that, within that idiom, like the Almonds, and that are just shining stars for us.
When you revisit older songs on the stage, do you reinvent them as you go? I'd imagine some songs have kind of evolved over the years.
Yeah, things evolved. We just evolved one for the Brooklyn Bowl show. And that usually happens when we're playing live. Like, I don't know if it happens out of boredom, but our bass player, Matt Fox, started doing something interesting, like in the song that I really like. So next time we had a rehearsal, I was like, "What were you doing there?" And in the end of the song, I'm like, "I really liked it," and he showed me. And so like let's all do that. Let's switch the chords there and change that ending. And then we did it. We changed the whole ending. So it is good to freshen them up a little bit and add a twist. And people who see us a lot get a little something else they weren't expecting, so that's always good too.
Circus Mind really has some layered sounds to it, so with keyboards and I guess organ, synth. How do you determine what to use when you're writing, and how do you decide sonically?
I try to use all my toys, really, and I try to be honest, I like to mix it up, just like mixing up the vibe of the style of songs on an album. I kind of think about that a little bit too. I'm like, I used piano on this one. Let's use a Wurlitzer electric piano on the next one, or a clavinet, or a Rhodes. And so that changes the flavor, basically, of the songs as well. So I have a great collection of classic keyboards in my studio on Long Island. So we do those out of my home. And so I like to mix up, and I love synthesizers and mellotrons and some of those stuff, which gives it a lot of it, that 70s flair that I like sometimes. And then, we have a sax player in the band, a percussionist. And so, they do that a little bit as well, depending on, the type of horn that they're playing or the type of percussion they're going to. So it's like different way to use different colors in the palette.
A lot of fun live. Circus Mind coming to the Great South Bay Music Festival this year. We're chatting with Mark Rechler. Looking down the road, is there kind of a sound or a collaboration you want to explore with the band that you haven't had a chance to do yet?
We're always, trying to grow and just keep the recording going. No, I can't say there's like some goal that I'm trying to get to. If I get on more festivals, that makes me happy. If I get some big opening spots like we just did at Brooklyn Bowl, that makes me happy. Not really looking to hit the road at this point.
Yeah.
It's just a little much for me and the boys. Everyone's got, things. So it's really about those special events and making those happen. And the more we get of that, then it's, the more we could share our love of music with everyone.
Well, can't wait to see you, Mark. Thank you for spending some time with us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Get to know the band, and looking forward to the performance at the Great South Bay Music Festival. Back again for another year of performances here at Shorefront Park in Patchogue. Well, Rechler, thank you so much. Circus Mind, can't wait to listen to the new record more and spend some time with it and see you live. Thanks for coming on.
Beautiful. Take care.